We can all agree this movie has the greatest trailer ever made, right? I thought my Revenge of the Fallen video was gonna have the most hot takes and unpopular opinions, but alas, we have reached the final installment of Michael Bay's Transformers trilogy, and I may have outdone myself. This is the final video I'm doing on Transformers, at least for a while. I could talk about Age of Extinction, I could talk about Bumblebee. I don't plan on talking about Last Night or Rise of the Beasts, but I set out to talk about the original trilogy that Michael Bay intended to do because he didn't want to come back, but money's a great bargaining chip. And this video will have concluded me talking about the original trilogy. So if I do more Transformers videos, it'll probably be a minute because I want to break from the robots. I have some other videos planned. And I had to put on a collared shirt for this video because we are about to talk about peak cinema. Yes, you read the thumbnail correctly. Transformers Dark of the Moon is a nearly perfect film. Now, before your blood starts boiling, let me tell you right now what a perfect film is. A perfect film does not have to be one of your favorite films of all time, nor does it have to be one of the greatest films ever made. It just means that it's a movie that you watch, you enjoy it, but you can't really find any major flaws in the film. And that's what Dark of the Moon is to me. For example, Toy Story 3. Perfect movie. No issues with it. I can't even nitpick the movie. It's beautiful, it brings a tear to my eye, but it's not one of my favorite films ever made. You following? Cool, because that's Dark of the Moon. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into this masterful conclusion to the Transformers trilogy.
We were once a peaceful race of intelligent mechanical beings.
Of all the historical revisionism that they did in these movies, I think Dark of the Moons is the best one. So the opening of the movie, we hear Optimus narrating over it, as is the usual with these movies. It always opens with Optimus Prime narrating. And we get to see a bit of what the War for Cybertron looked like. Final installment of the trilogy, they're taking us back to Cybertron for the first time, really, because we saw a glimpse of it in the first movie, but we didn't really see it fully. And now we do. We get to go back and see the war. And it wasn't fun. It's just constant shooting and fighting. There's no breaks at all. And this one ship called the Ark, which a lot of Transformers fans will know what that ship is, it gets shot down in space, floats through space, and crash lands on the moon in the year 1961, which is the same year that President John F. Kennedy promised to land a man on the moon. So yes, the whole reason the United States got involved in the space race in the 60s was because of the Transformers, and I think that is really cool. And that is sort of the inciting incident for this entire film. The only thing cooler than that is the fact that Michael Bay and his cinematographer shot this sequence so that their footage would match the actual footage that we had from the 60s. So it gives this entire sequence a historical documentary feel to it. They even went so far as to cast a fake Nixon and a fake Kennedy. Fake Kennedy looks awful, but they matched the shots of fake Kennedy to the actual shots of Kennedy. And a lot of times that can be really off-putting, but they were so smart with how they shot it that it doesn't bother me, and it's a really seamless transition between 1961 footage and 2011 footage. And the way the storytelling transitions from Cybertron to Earth is really smart too, because it's in Optimus's perspective for his speech, obviously, and once the Ark flies off into space and Optimus officially has no clue what happened to it, it switches to an Earth perspective to show how humans are reacting to the Ark hitting Earth. So we get a perspective shift to see how the Transformers react to Transformers and then how humans react to Transformers. It's so unsettling watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin explore the Ark, because something Michael Bay does brilliantly with all of these movies is the way he shows the scale of humans and Transformers And Neil and Buzz are like this big compared to the Transformers, and they're exploring the Ark, and there's just these massive robots that don't even fit into frame, and it's dark, and they're all dead, and I fully expected something to wake up when they were in there. I was like tense the entire time I saw this. I saw this movie in IMAX 3D, so like there was a Transformer right here the entire movie, and it was kind of frightening. And one of my favorite shots in this movie is the first shot they get of the Ark, and then we get to hear Nixon's famous phone call upon Neil and Buzz coming back to Earth, and it plays throughout the ending of the scene, and they time it out so that the line, "bring peace and tranquility to Earth," happens right before the camera goes into the crash vault of the Ark. It's the perfect way to open up the movie, the perfect way to set the stage and the stakes of this film, and like I said, also bring us back to Cybertron, because going back to the beginning is third installment 101. In fact, let's just bring in Randy real quick to explain third installments to us.
True trilogies are all about going back to the beginning and discovering something that wasn't true from the get-go.
Check.
You got a killer who's going to be superhuman.
Check.
You got to cryogenically freeze his head, decapitate him, or blow him up.
Decapitate him, check. Blow him up, check.
Anyone, including the main character, can die.
Mega check.
Past will come back to bite you in the ass.
Also a super check. The first two movies gave us the establishment of what's going to happen, title card, the opening, and then they introduced us to Sam Witwicky. This movie combines those first two things into just a 7-minute sequence, and then guess what it gives us? Well, it gives us Rosie Huntington-Whiteley's ass, but after that, it gives us Sam Witwicky and our new love interest, Carly Spencer, played by Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. And let's address the elephant in the room right off the bat. That is not Michaela. I definitely prefer Michaela as both a character and a love interest, but due to things that were said by Megan Fox before this film began, she was fired shortly before production, so they very quickly had to write in a new love interest, write that Michaela dumped Sam sometime after Revenge of the Fallen, and then cast a new person to play the love interest in a very short amount of time. And that would be all fine and dandy, except for one little thing. They didn't really rewrite the character. This role was very clearly supposed to be for Megan Fox. She likes cars a lot. She would be very easy to use against Sam as leverage. She even has the same dog. Not just like the same breed, like the same name and everything. Like it's like Sam got the dog when they broke up. It feels like Aaron Kruger went into the script, who's the writer of this movie by the way, feels like he went into the script, did a find and replace, and just changed Michaela to Carly, and then added one line that explains where Michaela went. Now, I like that they tried to give an in-universe reason as to why this girl looks different, but I think I would have preferred they just recast the character instead of write a new one and then take some plot beats from Revenge of the Fallen to build Carly into her own thing. It's probably my least favorite part of the movie because you can tell it was not supposed to be a new character, but they didn't have time to rewrite it. We also learn that Wheelie is living with Sam and... I almost said Michaela, see? We also learn that Wheelie is living with Sam and Carly alongside his friend Brains, who is Wheelie's sidekick in this movie, and I love both of these characters together. So Carly has a lot of money, Sam does not, and his parents are very pissed that he does not have a job. They establish all of this in this intro to Carly. And we also get this genius bit of foreshadowing.
Ah, shit, I seen this one. It's the one where Spock goes nuts.
And once Carly leaves to go to her amazing job, we're introduced to Sam's parents yet again, and I could not be happier because we've established I love these two people. They are some of my favorite characters in these movies, and they also established that Bumblebee's not with Sam anymore. Something that happened in Revenge of the Fallen is that Sam didn't need Bumblebee anymore, so they're following through on that. And speaking of Autobots, let's go see what the Autobots are up to. Well, Bumblebee, for one, is running special ops for the US government, something that should not be legal. I've actually been wondering that ever since I saw this in theaters. And also, Lennox is an international super spy now, so he got a sick promotion, so he gets to go do some fun stuff, including going to Chernobyl with Optimus Prime. A guy gives Lennox a tip about some Cybertronian tech. Lennox takes Optimus Prime and Ratchet, who completely leaves this scene for some reason, and they go to Chernobyl where they learn that the Russians were messing with a piece of Cybertronian technology at Chernobyl, and thank God they didn't go super disrespectful and make the reactor explosion happen because of that device. Unless I've just missed that scene for the last 12 years, that doesn't happen. And in this scene, we're introduced to one of our main Decepticons in this movie, even though he barely has any screen time. And that is Shockwave and his pet, the Driller Beast. Now, don't forget about him, because he's just going to leave the movie for 2 hours. So don't forget that he's in the movie. And I always liked its design. I know a lot of people hated it, but he fits with the aesthetic of the other Decepticons, but he also looks different enough. He looks alien, just look at his design. And he has a big gun. And he has the Driller Beast, so he's already one of the best Decepticons. This movie is criticized more so than the other two installments in this trilogy for being too human-focused. And I kind of understand what people mean in regards to this movie, because we focus on Sam at his job for a decent chunk of the first part of this movie, but I don't really see an issue with it because, on one hand, Accuretta, the place Sam works at, is so deeply connected to the moon landing and the plot of this movie that we kind of have to establish it. I mean, Ken Jeong is connected to the whole Decepticon thing, and then we also get Patrick Dempsey, and all of that goes back to the Decepticons also, so I understand why they need to devote a lot of time to it. And also, Sam is crucial to these films, so he kind of needs to be here. And I think this is the best that Sam Witwicky is in this trilogy. I also think this is the best that Shia LaBeouf is in this trilogy. He acts the shit out of this movie, and there's going to be some great examples of it later on. But Sam has saved the world twice now, and has not really gotten the recognition for it. It's a good contrast to Revenge of the Fallen, where he was a big deal, but he just wanted to not be. Now in this movie that he's done crazy stuff like this, he's having a hard time adjusting to just being a normal guy. But he is very crucial to this movie. He's very important to it, but then at the end he learns that none of that matters and all he needs is Carly. Storytelling, people! We then meet Patrick Dempsey, who is an unbelievably important character in this film and is the main human antagonist in this film. So here's what we know about him. We know he likes cars. We know that he gifts Carly a Mercedes SLS AMG later that we don't know is Soundwave, and we also don't learn till a bit later in the film that he is working with the Decepticons. However, Patrick Dempsey is one of the reasons that I say this movie is nearly perfect and not completely perfect. Nothing against Patrick Dempsey. He's amazing in this movie. I love him. But he adds a sort of forced romance to this movie because Sam thinks he's into Carly, and that leads to a bunch of jealousy and drama around that. And I understand that they wanted to give Sam that conflict to show how protective he is of Carly for when she's taken from him later and he goes into Chicago. But there's other ways to do that that don't involve this weird love triangle that's just the result of miscommunication. However, on the other hand, it gifts us the single greatest cut in the history of film. The villains in this movie. Holy shit. I think Age of Extinction has the best villain in these movies. He's part of the reason I might actually make an Age of Extinction video someday. But this movie, just in terms of villains in general, it's like they're in a league of their own. They are super evil. What they want makes sense, and Megatron's particularly interesting because in this one he actually lives up to the title of Decepticon. He's also in a much different place, and it's cool to see. Megatron gets an arc in this movie. They didn't have to give him one, but they did. Megatron's so proud of his Cybertronian heritage to the point that he never even took on an alt mode for Earth. He was that Cybertronian jet in the first movie, and then in the second movie, he was a flying Cybertronian looking tank thing instead of scanning a different vehicle. Then he got his ass handed to him by Optimus Prime a couple times, and now he's an Earth truck hiding out in the desert completely under the radar. He's falling apart. The doctors are constantly working on him. He's feeding children. He's like kind of just going insane. It's a great direction to take this character. Now, of course, Megatron has his usual crew of Decepticons in this movie, and the lineup this time is Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, and Shockwave, and then Laserbeak is in there to help out also, and it's cool that Laserbeak gets a lot to do in this movie. He's one of my favorite villains in this movie, and while I love that we get to see all 4 of the main Decepticons together and all 3 of Megatron's most trusted lieutenants, it's a bummer that they never all got to share the screen at the same time. I wish Shockwave was in this initial scene with the Decepticons, but I'll take what I can get. And then, of course, Megatron has a bunch of minions and an entire army hidden on the moon. Equally as impressive as the Decepticon roster is the Autobot roster. It's a nice step up from Revenge of the Fallen. The twins, not here anymore. So we have our core 4 from the first movie who are still around. We have Optimus Prime, Ironhide, Ratchet, and Bumblebee. And then they gave Sideswipe an expanded role. And then they introduced a few new bots to us. So we have Q, aka Wheeljack, but they never call him Wheeljack in this movie. And I always had a soft spot for this guy. It's nice that he's the only Transformer that thought to make equipment for the humans. And then Dino, aka Mirage, but they call him Dino, he's the Ferrari in this movie who uses wrist blades. Fun fact, the reason he doesn't have a gun is because Ferrari said he could only be in the movie if he doesn't use a gun and he doesn't die. So, fun fact of the video. And then there are the Wreckers. There's 3 of them, but we don't meet them until much later in the movie, but they are amazing also. And then finally there's Wheelie and Brains. So 2 great robot lineups for this final film. And Sam's job in the Decepticon storylines kind of come to a head when Laserbeak kills Ken Jeong, but not before Ken Jeong gives us what may be the best line reading of all time.
Wang. Deep Wang. Deep Wang. You're not getting it. Deep throat.
So let's back up and talk about what the Autobots have been up to since I've been talking about humans and Decepticons for most of this video. Upon getting the fuel cell from Chernobyl, Optimus Prime flips his shit at our new government asshat for this movie. They then bring out Buzz Aldrin, and I really want to know what they said to convince him to be in this movie because we know how he feels about moon-related conspiracy theories. At which point they learn that the Ark is chilling on the moon, and so Optimus and Ratchet take the Xanthium, the spaceship that brought Sideswipe and the second wave of Autobots to Earth, and they retrieve Optimus's mentor Sentinel Prime, and they also recover 5 pillars that we learn are part of a space bridge and are part of the bigger plot and the bigger threat in this movie. So that brings us to where we are. All the plot lines in this movie connect back to the Ark being on the moon, which I think is really smart, and it does 2 things. It makes the plot less convoluted, but it also makes it more complex. I know that sounds like contradiction, but like complex in a good way. It has several moving parts that all bounce off each other and all work with each other. It kind of feels like a whodunit, and there's all these puzzle pieces, and then Sentinel Prime's betrayal in a little bit is what makes it all click. And so Optimus Prime makes the single biggest mistake in his life, and he revives Sentinel, which sets in motion exactly what the Decepticons need. And not only is Sentinel Prime an incredibly well-written and complex character, but he's also the only voice that can rival Peter Cullen, because he is voiced by none other than Leonard Nimoy. and it helps give him this ancient demeanor. Sentinel Prime is a legend, a living legend, and coming off of Revenge of the Fallen, where we learned more about the Primes, seeing another one in action is the perfect place to go, and seeing both Primes is cool. It's just a shame they never got to fight side by side. And there's another subtle bit of foreshadowing here, because Sentinel mentions that they once had hundreds of pillars. Obviously something had to happen to them. The screenplay of this movie is secretly genius, by the way. Everything connects in a clever way, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds and gets more detailed the more you think about the plot of this movie. Every single rewatch, I get something new out of it I didn't notice the first time. It's really nice to see Sam and Bumblebee back together because they've been the emotional core of these movies. It's a movie about a boy in his car in one hand and then a boy and a girl in the other hand. So you kind of need Bumblebee and Sam together, but that doesn't always work if they're together from the get-go. So completely splitting them up for the first third of this movie was the perfect place to go with it. It just makes them reconnecting hit harder. And because we're getting all the characters back, we have to go meet the best character. At least best human character in this trilogy. Seymour Simmons is the GOAT, and the reason I say that he's the most consistently written character in these movies is because he never loses that egotistical and narcissistic side of himself. First movie, he was a government agent. That whole thing fell apart. He's a meat deli chopper guy. Totally forgot the name of that job position for a sec. Just trying to survive, and then he goes and helps save the world. But unlike Sam, who was just kind of on the DL about it and upset about it, Simmons monetized the hell out of it, and so now he's super rich and he's super famous. Simmons also has an assistant named Dutch, played by Alan Tudyk, the man who brought K2SO to life, and then he dresses like a guy from The Matrix and goes to help Sam and Bumblebee solve this mystery. It's a badass trio, and get ready to see a lot of them, because for a decent little chunk of this movie, it's just Sam, Simmons, and Bumblebee. And we get a really good look at where Sam's arc is going in this movie, because usually the female lead is the other part of the Bumblebee and Sam trio. Not in this movie. It's Simmons, because Sam is so caught up in trying to save the world again and be cool again that he completely neglects what actually matters. He forgets they have to go to Dylan's party. He completely neglects Carly and being with her. Bumblebee also breaks a very expensive looking chandelier, and it leads to this bombshell of a dialogue exchange.
I just want to matter. You matter to me.
It's the most realistic and most human part of Sam. Once he realized he was cool, something he has not been in the first and a half installment of this trilogy, he can't deal with people not thinking he's anything less than a superhero. He almost develops an addiction to the Transformers. But Sam and Carly have their argument. Carly leaves to go do her thing, and then we don't see her for a little bit of the movie. Instead, Sam and Simmons go off on a mission with three of the most badass Autobots: Bumblebee, Sideswipe, and Dino, and it leads to maybe the second greatest action sequence in the franchise, because the forest battle is top tier. Nothing's gonna top it. Sam and Simmons go off some information they got from Brains, because of course Wheelie and Brains are helping them. And there's some Russian cosmonauts who are still chilling in the US, and they go talk to them. And the Russians say that while the US were the first people to send men to the moon, the Russians sent cameras and satellites up there long before the US sent anyone up there. And they got pictures of strange rocks, as they call them, that Sam immediately pegs as the hundreds of pillars that the Autobots just so happened to misplace, and that the Decepticons needed Optimus to revive Sentinel so that they could activate the space bridge. It's at this moment that Sam Witwicky should have figured out Sentinel Prime was a villain, but he didn't. So now the mission is to get Sentinel out of wherever he is. He's out in the open, and they have to get him back to the Autobot base and keep him under constant surveillance, because the Decepticons are coming for him. So Sam, Simmons, and Dutch are with three Autobots: Bumblebee, Sideswipe, and Dino. They have just regrouped with Sentinel Prime, Their mission is to get Sentinel back to the nest base where Lennox and the rest of the team are, who have been alerted of the threat and are now ready to go. Charlotte is on her way to Nest, and Optimus Prime is 10 minutes behind Sentinel, also on his way there. We also know that the Decepticons are en route to get Sentinel Prime, and the Energon detectors pick up 3 black Suburbans, which we can deduce to be the Decepticons way before they transform. So with that masterful setup, we get the highway chase, because it cannot be that simple.
You gotta get Sentinel out of here, you gotta guard him.
A group of Decepticons known as the Dreads, because they all have dreads, yeah, pretty easy to figure out, get there very quickly. They take out Simmons and Dutch, and then they go after Sentinel. So now Bumblebee, Sideswipe, and Dino have to protect Sentinel and take out the 3 Decepticons while they make their way down this very fast-moving highway back to the Nest base. Action in the first movie, good. Action in the second movie, a step up. Action in the third movie, some of the best action in any movie. But the fight comes to a head when they get close to the base and the Decepticons are still there. And so Sideswipe decides it's time for a bit of fisticuffs, and Ironhide comes out to play by initiating the greatest game of chicken the world has ever seen. But then the movie gets really sad, because right after Ironhide and Sideswipe kill the Dreads and do something really badass, Sentinel decides to take him off the board. And we all knew the twist was coming. Like, it wasn't some insane twist in the theaters, except when I was 9, I was mildly shocked by it, but not that surprised. And so Sentinel Prime takes his rust cannon, shoots Ironhide, I believe 4 times with it, and then tries to shoot Bumblebee, but Bumblebee gets out of there before that can happen. And people were pissed. Which to me means that they just handled the death super well if people are that upset about it. And I mean, why wouldn't they be? Ironhide is a super awesome and fan favorite Transformer, but it makes sense why Sentinel had to kill him. Ironhide is just a walking tank. I mean, the amount of firepower that dude is packing at all times. He's one of the most dangerous Autobots, so it makes sense that Sentinel would choose to take him off the board first. And don't forget the rules of the trilogy, guys. Anyone can die now, a rule that is still going to keep carrying on throughout the rest of this movie. So no, I'm not pissed that Ironhide died. I'm just pissed that he died because I like him. If you want to talk about some incredible CGI, just look at Optimus's facial expressions when he gets back to the base and sees it destroyed. His mentor betrayed him, killed one of his best friends, took the pillars, destroyed his home, and turned the tide of a war in one move. So what I'm saying is it is understandable why Optimus is so pissed off in this movie, and we're going to have a lot of opportunities to talk about just how pissed off Optimus is in this movie and why it makes perfect sense. Damn, I really haven't had many criticisms, have I? From this point forward, the movie does not slow down. It picks up and stays up. It just goes full gas from here until the end of the film. And it does feel like the ending. That is something I love about this movie. This feels like the end of the story, because remember, this is where Michael Bay was going to end it. These first 3 films definitely felt more like a passion project for him. He didn't want to do Age of Extinction and The Last Night. This was the conclusion to his story. And that shows. You can feel it. Fan favorite characters are dying, the stakes are higher, everything's darker, the movie's more serious. Characters are really being tested at a level they haven't before. Everyone is at their low point, and evil has basically won for most of the film. At no point in this movie does it ever feel like the middle chapter of a saga like it became. It feels like the end of one. Another great example of that is when Sam goes to see his parents and get advice after he lost Carly. It has such this end of the road energy to it, and you can just feel that Sam is going to risk everything to try to get her back because he learned just how much of an idiot he was being. I love this movie, guys. Have you noticed? And if you want an oh shit moment, I present to you an army of Decepticons who have been hiding out on the moon for God knows how long, jumping through a space bridge activated by Sentinel Prime, coming to Earth and immediately wreaking havoc. And it's not a few Decepticons, it's an army of Decepticons and their spaceships. Also something worth noting, Optimus Prime tries to plead with Sentinel here, and it doesn't work. Just remember that for later in the movie. Now answer this question for me. Why was Megatron sitting on the Lincoln Memorial not a piece of marketing for the movie? Not only is Sentinel Prime working with the Decepticons, Patrick Dempsey is working with the Decepticons, and Carly's car is a Decepticon. So now they can use Carly as leverage to get Sam to do whatever they want. So the Autobots get voted out to maintain peace on Earth, and it leads to what is the saddest and arguably best written scene in the franchise. The slow motion of the Autobots driving towards the Xanthium knowing it's over, Brains trying to plead with Sam to get him to convince the humans to let them stay, Steve Jablonsky's score over the whole thing, Optimus talking to Sam, Bumblebee's goodbye to Sam, how sad everyone is, Shia LaBeouf's performance. There are some beautiful lines in this that I find myself thinking about all the time, so I'm going to play some of my favorites for you right now.
You may lose your faith in us, but never in yourselves. From here, the fight will be your own.
We're gonna do whatever we can.
Make it like it was.
You will always be
My friend.
Years from now, they're gonna ask us, where were you when they took over the planet?
Alright guys, it's hot. I got myself orange juice that I'm gonna hopefully not spill all over everything. But the question has to be asked. Did Optimus Prime willingly let thousands of human beings die just to prove a point? And I know that I'm the biggest Bayformers Optimus Prime apologist on the planet, but I sincerely do not think he intentionally did this. So I think a lot of factors went into this. Optimus did say that the humans were gonna have to fight this themselves, but they knew it was a losing battle because it's the Decepticons, they're deceiving, that's what they do. But also the humans didn't trust Optimus because of the things that he did do. And so I think part of it is Optimus couldn't retaliate and stay there or things would be infinitely worse for the Autobots and the humans, so he had to make it seem like they left. Optimus knew people were gonna die no matter what, which is not a decision he made lightly, and if he tried to retaliate and stayed, more people would have died. But you can hear it when he talks to Sam just how sad he is about this whole thing and the inevitable loss of life. And also, drive time from the Kennedy Center in Florida to Chicago, Illinois. That's a really long drive. So no, I don't think that Optimus intentionally let people die. I think he made the hard call that people were gonna die, and this is the way that the least amount of people dies. It's the hard choices that make great leaders. Optimus Prime's arc is very overlooked in this movie because he has an arc in this movie. People just don't see it. It's a bigger arc than he had in the first two films. Optimus has always put too much faith in people. He is always very easy to trust people. It's his biggest character flaw. And part of what he learns in this movie, that is actually something he learned from his mentor, and it's with a heavy heart that he has to realize he can't save everyone in the war, and there are going to be casualties that he can't prevent. And some of those casualties are going to be from his own missteps. So this movie kind of sends him on a redemption arc that forces him to live with his mistakes, learn from them, reinvigorate his trust in people, and at the end of the day, come to terms with the fact that he has to kill the closest thing he has to a father. Character arc. And this whole thing explores an idea that Optimus actually proposed in Revenge of the Fallen.
What if we leave? And you're wrong.
So how do they explore that? Well, the Decepticons do this. This movie is really dark. I have not talked about it yet, but it is unbelievably dark to the point that I'm amazed kids were allowed to see it. I remember my parents kind of regretting bringing my sister to see it purely for the scene when the Decepticons are just mowing down massive groups of humans because they can. And the fact that the movie we got is a mellowed down version of what it could have been is crazy. Now, when I was researching for this video, I found an Entertainment Weekly article that came out 4 days after the movie released, and it addresses the movie's body count. I'm gonna read that to you guys real quick. Transformers Dark of the Moon is the movie that proves once and for all that the PG-13 rating is the single worst thing to ever happen to the American cinema. Imagine pulling aside your average John and Jane Q moviegoer back in the very early 1980s and describing the film's plot to them. In quotes, well, the vast majority of the population of Chicago is massacred, dozens of fleeing citizens are simply disintegrated right in front of your eyes, several characters get sliced or bodily torn apart, and at the climax of the movie, the film's sociopathic protagonist rips off one villain's face and shoots the other villain in the back of his head, execution style. They came to the conclusion after that there are 78 on-screen kills in the movie, and total probably 2 million people die. People die in this movie like it's going out of fucking style. Here are some of those kills.
Decepticon punk. Why did you...
Let's talk about Shia LaBeouf's acting for a minute. We're coming back to it because it's so good in this movie. Look at his eyes when they drive into Chicago. Look at everything he's feeling. That's a really good performance. And the scene as a whole is heartbreaking too, not just Shia LaBeouf. And you get to see the ruthlessness of the Decepticons. They took the city just because they felt like it. And to make it even crazier, for the Transformers, this is a normal day. The Autobots will wake up one day, they'll fight, they'll destroy a city, and they'll just move on. This is a normal thing for them that doesn't faze them one bit. But for the humans, this is the worst thing we've ever seen in the history of mankind. I really appreciate the idea that Sam and Epps don't go to Chicago to try to save it. That would be stupid, and this movie would be much worse. Instead, Sam goes to Chicago to save Carly, and Epps just goes to provide backup because Epps and the few people that came with them don't realize just how drastic this is. And as if the movie couldn't get more sad than it is, Tyrese Gibson kills this line delivery.
It's over. I'm sorry, but it's over.
You know a line a lot of people hate?
We will kill them all.
Because a a lot of people argue that this is out of character and there's no reason he would be this pissed off. I can't possibly imagine why Optimus would be angry at the Decepticons. Can't possibly imagine why he would want to take them all down. Doesn't make a lick of sense to me. I've been wondering for 12 years why Optimus is so angry. Something this final battle does really well that's a step up from Revenge of the Fallen is that every single character has a part to play. The Autobots, the Decepticons, Sam, Carly, Dylan, Epps, Lennox, Francis McDormand, even Dutch has a part to play in this final battle. It really feels like the entire world, two species, are coming together to defeat the Decepticons once and for all. Something this final battle does not do really well is the way in which Optimus Prime gets taken out of the movie. It's a tradition in these movies that Optimus has to be taken out of the fight somehow so that he can show up fashionably late and completely turn the tide of war. In the first movie, he fights Bone Crusher and falls really far behind. In Revenge of the Fallen, he's dead for most of the movie and comes back to life at a crucial moment. In Dark of the Moon, he gets shot by Shockwave and gets tangled in cables for 14 minutes. The build-up to that is great though, even though the way it ends is so stupid. Where the humans are inside this really tall building trying to shoot the pillar, but the building's starting to tip, and then this one Decepticon comes in, and then Shockwave from the ground sees that the humans are trying to do something inside, and he sends the Driller Beast after him, so the Driller Beast wraps himself around it and rips the building, and it falls completely on its side, and it's like laying on top of another building with all the human characters inside it, and then Optimus managed to get his flight tech out of his trailer just in time, and he comes and obliterates the Driller Beast, but him getting tangled is really stupid. But to address another plot hole with this movie, people claim that Optimus Prime has a sword and could have very easily cut himself out of the cables. Now, I'm here to tell you why he couldn't do that. Later in the movie, when he comes back into the fight, he ejects the gun that's on his hand to activate his sword. The gun is blocking the sword. He can't move his hand to shoot his sword out. So, the fact that he's tangled, that means the gun is stuck to his arm, so he can't use his sword. He is just stuck there. The battle's really weird at the start though, because up until Bumblebee kills Soundwave, the battle feels largely separate. It's just a bunch of individual vignettes that happen one after the other instead of all at the same time. Take Star Wars Return of the Jedi, for example. There are 3 fights happening at the end of that movie, and it's cutting between all 3 of them, so you get the sense that all of this is happening at the same time. In Dark of the Moon, it feels like they're not all happening at the same time. Like, what's happening when everyone's in the building? What's happening when Sam is fighting Starscream? Like, what's happening when Bumblebee's fighting Soundwave? We don't know. It feels like just whatever's happening in that moment is all that's happening at the final battle. It's a really weird way to cut a final fight together, but it doesn't prevent it from being cool. So while I'm on the subject of Sam and Starscream, let's talk about the way Starscream goes out, because I'm very conflicted on it. So Sam and Carly get separated from Epps and everyone else because they come under gunfire, and then Sam gets cornered by Starscream. So Sam has to handle this fight mostly on his own, using only the equipment that Q gave him. And then Lennox comes in later, and I like that Starscream is taken out in a team up between all 3 of the leads from the first movie. Sam plants the bomb, Lennox comes in for cover fire, and then Bumblebee comes in with the save. I like that. But Starscream goes out like a little bitch. Like, let him have a 1v1. Let Bumblebee get in on the action. It doesn't have to be a full fight. Bumblebee doesn't have to deliver the killing blow, and I'm happy that Bumblebee doesn't deliver the killing blow. Let Sam get the kill on the Decepticon, but at least let Starscream and Bumblebee have a face-off. But seeing Starscream finally die is such a satisfying moment, because he's the only Decepticon that has made it through all 3 movies, so far at least, without dying a single time. And it's the moment when I was a kid where I finally realized this was the last Transformers movie. Megatron dying, used to it. Decepticons dying, used to it. Starscream, he didn't die. That was just the thing that didn't happen. So it shocked me when his head exploded. And Sam's line actually sums it up pretty well.
Oh, he's dead.
You guys want to know a weird edit, though? So Bumblebee saves Sam and Lennox. They rejoin everyone else, and then in the next scene, Bumblebee's a prisoner of war. What happened, and why didn't I get to see it? Also, there's a continuity error. They said 4 Autobots were captured. That's Bumblebee, Q, Dino, and Ratchet. But, if you look in the background, Sideswipe is there also. So 5 Autobots were captured. And then Optimus in the cables and the Wreckers are freeing him, which means there's a chunk of the fight where Wheelie and Brains are the only Autobots who are still standing. I wish I got to see more of their adventures. And it's cool because they don't seem like they'd be able to do much, but oh boy do they do a lot. They're kind of the MVPs here. The execution scene is almost perfect. So first off, they kill Q in just the most brutal way. And you're not super emotional when you watch it because you don't really have an emotional attachment to Q. But it's sad because he's just pleading and begging and trying to surrender so that they'll spare him. And the Decepticons gun him down and laugh it off because they don't care. This movie is really pushing PG-13, I'm telling you. And then after Barricade and unnamed Decepticon number 39 kill Wheeljack, I know it's Q, I'm changing up for a sec, Soundwave decides that Bumblebee is their next target. And it's sad seeing Bumblebee know he's about to die. He tries to fight back, it doesn't work, they're outnumbered, now gunned. And to make it even sadder, him and Sam can see each other. And Sam and Carly are now watching this, and Rosie Huntington-Whiteley does a great job in this scene, just with her crying at the sight of Bumblebee about to get killed, and her begging Sam not to go out there and get killed. We also see Sam have to watch this, and Bumblebee look at Sam, and Shia's acting in this scene is great as well. But Michael Bay wasn't happy enough with just letting Sam watch his friend die. We then got to hear Bumblebee's last words. And right as Soundwave's about to pull the trigger and Little John thinks Bumblebee is going to get his head blown off, Wheelie and Brains complete their little mission, and the ship comes falling down over the battlefield, which gives Bee and the rest of the Autobots enough time to escape and fight back. And this is where my issue with the scene comes in, because there are 4 other Autobots here, and we don't see them. Did Michael Bay, Aaron Kruger, and the VFX team forget that Dino, Sideswipe, and Ratchet were among those captured? Why didn't we get to see them kick ass in this scene? It would have been awesome. But then Bumblebee grants us with one of the most brutal executions in these movies, and you saw it a few minutes ago, but I'm gonna show it to you again because it's good. It's really good. And then the button of the scene is that getting out of it isn't all sunshine and rainbows, because while everyone on the ground survived, Brains and Wheelie went down with the ship and died. No, they did not survive. Okay? Did not happen. Age of Extinction in the last night. I'm sorry, even though I kind of enjoy Age of Extinction, the movies ended here for the most part, unless I rewatch Age of Extinction and really like it. Brains and Wheelie died, they said so themselves, and Bumblebee watched it happen. Soldiers throwing down with the Decepticons is really cool. The Autobots coming in to help throw down with the Decepticons is really cool. But that sort of just becomes the mindless action loop that you're used to. So to up the intensity a bit, because Michael Bay can't have the audience getting bored, they introduce a planet-sized problem known as Cybertron. And we've established that Michael Bay is really good at showing scale in his movies. And this is a great example of that. That is Earth. That is Cybertron from Earth. At no point does Cybertron ever feel small. It doesn't feel the same size as Earth. It doesn't feel smaller than Earth. It is scary massive. I know what the main focus of this scene is, and I know what you guys want me to talk about, but I'm going to talk about some other things I like before I point out the fact that Optimus kills like 10 Decepticons, including Shockwave, in roughly 30 seconds, and then shoots the pillar with Shockwave's gun to force Sentinel Prime to come down and face him in a 1v1 deathmatch. But fine, I'll point out the fact that Optimus flies in and kills about 10 Decepticons, including Shockwave, in like 30 seconds, and then shoots the pillar with Shockwave's gun, forcing Sentinel Prime to come down and face him in a 1v1 deathmatch. And I am a firm believer that this is Optimus Prime's greatest on-screen feat. Nothing comes close to it. This is the most badass thing he's ever done. He didn't even need any backup. The rest of the Autobots are in the back, shooting from a distance, trying to advance, and then Daddy Prime just comes in and shows them how it's done. Nothing has topped it yet. Nothing will ever top it. Nothing can ever top it. It's the most badass thing Optimus Prime has ever done on screen, and I will not be accepting alternate arguments at this time because there aren't any. But I gotta ask the important questions. How did Megatron end up here? What has he been doing the entire battle? And why didn't I get to see it? And I think it's cool that for once, everyone is joining the fight. In the first two movies, Optimus was going fisticuffs with the villain on his own. In this one, he's got all sorts of backup. He's got all the Autobots. He's got pretty much the entire world backing him at this point to help defeat Sentinel. The only person not helping is Sam Witwicky because he has his own conflict to resolve. And this movie needed a human villain. It was time. Dylan doesn't believe the Decepticons are the good guys. He just believes that it's the only way he can survive. And so that both these humans have something to do, Sam and Dylan fight for control of the pillar. And I like that this is not a clean fight. These are not trained combatants. These are not soldiers. These are two civilians who are now apparently the spokesmen for their respective sides of battle and also for the survival of their race. And they're hitting each other with rocks, and Sam takes a piece of like rebar with a piece of concrete on the side and hits Dylan with it. And the fact that Dylan's head is still whole after that is a discussion for another time, but that's a thing that happens. While all this is happening, Carly decides she can help and goes to conclude Michaela's arc. I cannot emphasize how badass it would have been if the same woman from the first two movies was the one to reason with Megatron, but I get it. It's a cool scene nonetheless, and it gives Carly something to do and gives Megatron an arc. Carly's not an idiot. It's been shown time and time again through the movie that she's pretty smart, and earlier in the movie she witnessed a conversation between Sentinel Prime and Megatron in which Sentinel was just throwing Megatron around and abusing him. And so knowing that Optimus is not going to win this fight alone, she decides to exploit that aspect of Sentinel and Megatron's relationship and use it to end the war. And this is the perfect direction to take Megatron because of how broken he's been the entire movie and how weak he's really felt. And the fact that they gave Pure Evil a character arc is just the cherry on top. Anyway, Dylan beats Sam and reactivates the pillar. Sentinel detaches Optimus's arm from his body. Things aren't looking good. The Autobots are losing again. And then Megatron comes in with the save and just abuses Sentinel Prime. This is a royal ass whooping. And this was Captain America lifting Mjolnir before Captain America lifted Mjolnir. And we essentially get 3 minutes of badass. And there's only like 5 minutes left in the movie. So Sam comes back and cracks a piece of rebar across Dylan's head that he, for some reason, didn't see coming. And boom, Dylan's out of the equation. And then Bumblebee, being the bona fide badass that he is, ends the Great War in one move by tackling the pillar like a linebacker. And it reverses the flow and sends all the ships back up to Cybertron, and then destroys Cybertron and like funnels it through itself and sends it back through the space bridge. There's no more Decepticons. So, like I said, Bumblebee ended the war in one move. But there is one last conflict to deal with and one last controversy to solve. How Sentinel, Megatron, and Optimus's fight comes to an end. So let's talk about the alternate ending to this film, because the ending of this film is not the original ending to the film. The ending leaked a bit before the movie came out, which scared Michael Bay and the studio into changing the ending, and in the ending, Optimus and Megatron team up to both fight Sentinel, and they shoot him with his rust cannon and his body just disintegrates into rust like Ironhide's did. And then Megatron offers a truce to Optimus. Optimus lays down his arms, accepts, and Megatron drives off. And that ending is actually in the novelization of the movie, because the novelization was done on an earlier draft before the ending was changed so that the book could be done in time for the movie to come out. And I'm gonna be real, that ending sucks. You know what's a cool ending?
Who would you be without me, Prime? Time to find out.
Of course this is a controversy. This is a controversy because people claim that Optimus is a bloodthirsty psychopath in this scene and that him killing a surrendering enemy is unwarranted. Now, where people got the idea that Megatron was surrendering from is because he says he wants a truce with Optimus. Surrendering and a truce are not the same thing. Megatron is not surrendering. Second, what exactly would he have to offer Optimus in exchange? Megatron doesn't have any Decepticons left. He's the only Decepticon left, and what's Optimus gonna do? Let him roam the Earth? So Optimus has two options here. He can either A, accept Megatron's truce, and hope that the man who's named after the word deceive doesn't deceive him, or B, he can eliminate the guy who's responsible for thousands of years of pain, suffering, and other bullshit. I think he made the right move. And do I really need to explain why Sentinel deserved what he got? First off, Optimus has given him many chances throughout the film to not do what he's doing, and Sentinel is like, nah, I'm gonna keep doing what he's doing. Second of all, this is the man who shot Ironhide in the back, betrayed his family, joined the Decepticons, killed thousands of humans, led to the Autobots being exiled, which completely destroyed their reputation with humanity, and then he ripped Optimus's arm off. I'd fucking shoot him in the head also. He proved he didn't deserve saving, and he didn't exactly have anything left because no way were the Autobots ever gonna accept him back. Plus, killing Megatron and Sentinel ensures that the Decepticons can't come back and the war can't continue. Something that, weirdly, they actually kept intact in the next couple movies, because Lockdown's not a Decepticon, and neither is Quintessa. Remember when Sentinel said that Optimus can never make the hard decisions? Optimus made the easy decision once in the movie and it led to everything that happened. From there on out, he was forced to make the hard call over and over, and he sacrificed the needs of the few for the safety of the many. And people do not give the Autobots enough credit for destroying their planet without hesitation to save a different one. I'm always caught off guard over how quickly this movie ends. Badass music plays while Optimus stands over the bodies of Megatron and Sentinel Prime with the war now over. All the humans rejoin. Bumblebee goes from clean to dirty mid-transformation. I've said before that I'm a sucker for rom-coms, so Sam embracing Carly at the end and confessing his love to her makes my heart grow 3 sizes. And that's the conclusion of his arc, where he realized that despite all this, the only thing he needs in this world to be happy is Carly. He gets the girl, and Bumblebee continues to be the greatest wingman in the universe. And with that, we get Optimus Prime's final speech. A speech in which he says that no matter what challenges they face, the Autobots will always be there to protect Earth and its people. And we get one final shot of the Autobots' new and true home. But instead of the camera pushing in like it does usually with these shots, it's pulling out to reveal the planet that they fought so hard to protect. And with one final Linkin Park needle drop, we conclude one of my favorite trilogies of all time. In my mind, Age of Extinction and The Last Knight are high-budget fan fiction, especially The Last Knight. Earth is not Unicron, the Allspark created the Transformers have not been on Earth forever, Ratchet didn't get murdered by Lockdown and Cemetery Wind after this movie, it was just a happy ending and everyone lived happily ever after. Cybertron, permanently destroyed, the story ends with Transformers Dark of the Moon. And then they rebooted the series with Bumblebee and the trilogy was left alone and it's a good story. I may touch on Bumblebee in the future. The fact that it's not connected to Michael Bay's movies makes me happy, and I do really like that movie. Transformers Dark of the Moon is nearly perfect. It has its issues, but god damn is it a good, satisfying, exciting, and badass conclusion to this story. And it's just so much fun that the issues it does have, I almost don't care about. It was the best possible end to the Transformers trilogy. A trilogy that means a lot to me. These were my childhood. I love these movies. It's one of my favorite trilogies. Hell, I might actually go rewatch it in the next couple days just from doing these videos. If anything, I hope that these 3 videos I did can make you look back on these movies more fondly, see the beauty in them. As Kay Yeager says in Age of Extinction, dig through the junk and find the treasure. If not, I hope that you at least enjoyed watching them. The beauty of opinions is that we don't have to agree, and while I love these movies, you guys might not. Anyway, that's all for me. I've been talking nonstop about Transformers for months. I'm gonna go do a different video coming out that I hope you guys will love. It's a very near and dear to my heart one. It's one of my favorite animated films I'm gonna be talking about. I'll give you a little sneak peek of what it is.
Sun goes down, and we are here together.
But before I finish that, I'm gonna go take a nap, because regardless of my thoughts on these movies, they drain you. Bye, guys.